Hi everyone, thank you for your time and attention for the next couple of minutes while I go over the use of pesticides in Santa Barbara County, why they should be reduced, and possible ways to go about that. Hopefully you either get some kind of inspiration to take action or at the very least, learn something today. So on my second slide is just a brief content overview you could go over if you'd like, but I'm going to move on to the introduction to pesticide use. So California is a leading agricultural producer in the United States, and we dominate in national production of strawberries and many more fruits, but I really want to focus on strawberries because Santa Barbara County is the largest producer of strawberries in the entire state.
Wow.
Yeah, as well, despite California's reputation for having the most strict pesticide regulations in the country, even stricter than the EPA, we still allow the use of some really harmful chemicals, and we have a long way to go.
Okay.
So we can be exposed to these chemicals through residues on food, contaminated drinking water, airborne drift, and direct occupational contact. As well, many are classified as human carcinogens or endocrine disruptors.
Yeah.
And exposure can lead to things such as motor delays, memory deficits, seizures, and even death. In terms of environmental consequences, pesticide runoff contaminates water and has led to significant declines in fish and amphibian populations. As well, fumigants reduce microbial diversity and disrupt vital soil functions. It can also alter the structure of bacterial communities, leading to increased emissions of nitrous oxide. And this is a greenhouse gas with far greater climate impact than carbon dioxide. As well, decades of environmental justice research have shown that low-income, immigrant, and communities of color are disproportionately impacted by these exposures to these harmful chemicals.
Yeah.
In terms of our immigrant justice sector, immigrants are obviously relied on very heavily for our strawberry production, and many lack the means to speak out against their harmful conditions. As well, in terms of our criminal justice sector, convicts are used as an increasingly cheap labor source, and 27% of the public prisons here in California and 9% of our private prisons use agricultural labor in their prison work programs.
Oh. Wow.
Which, by the way, are excluded from federal labor protections, which are already pretty bad. And in terms of our housing justice sector, low-income communities are disproportionately impacted, with the Department of Pesticide Regulation permitting 14 times the maximum safe daily exposure rate for cancer risk.
Who permit? I'm sorry.
The Department of Pesticide Regulation permits 14 times the amount.
Permits that amount?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And permits to whom again? I'm sorry.
Oh, so for those living in agricultural areas.
Okay.
Exposure? They permit that much exposure?
Oh yeah, that much exposure. So, because we are a hotspot here in Santa Barbara County for agricultural production, we use a lot of pesticides. And this shouldn't just be concerns to environmental justice advocates, but also criminal, immigrant, and housing justice advocates alike. So, what are the pesticides that are most commonly used and what are their impacts? So, I'm gonna go ahead and start off with methyl bromide. And the exposure from methyl bromide has been linked to lower birth weights, body length, and head size in newborns. As well, it's been shown to cause heart failure, diminished motor coordination, and even evidence of lasting structural brain damage after exposure has been reported. In terms of its environmental effects, it's classified as a Class 1 ozone-depleting substance under the U.S. Clean Air Act. Basically, methyl bromide breaks down and releases bromine atoms, which destroy our ozone molecules. This leads to thinning of the ozone layer and increased ultraviolet light penetrating to Earth's surface. Now, this caused increased risks of skin cancers and genetic mutations. Crops also suffer from lower yields, and aquatic ecosystems are similarly vulnerable. So we have realized the harms of this really bad chemical, and in 1992, the Montreal Protocol was implemented, in which developed nations were required to achieve a full phase-out, but this didn't happen because of critical use exemptions. And because of this, in 2014, 93% of methyl bromide used in the US was allocated to strawberry cultivation here in California. And we are the only state still requesting these exemptions for our strawberries. So I'm gonna move on to 1,3-D, which is also another insanely commonly used pesticide here in Santa Barbara County. So 1,3-D exposure has been linked to irritation of the eyes, throat, and respiratory tract. As well, it's a carcinogen, so it shouldn't be surprising to hear that it has been linked to increases in cancer-related deaths here in California in areas where 1,3-D contamination in water sources was high and where there was elevated 1,3-D application rates. As well, in terms of its environmental effects, it readily evaporates after application and can persist in the atmosphere from hours to days, meaning it's a significant contributor to air pollution. Because of that, California regulators suspended its use briefly in 1990 after monitoring revealed unsafe levels in agricultural airspace.
Is this also used for strawberries, or is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all of these are used for strawberries.
Okay.
And its use did resume under revised guidelines, but enforcement has been inconsistent, which is highlighted by Dow exploiting a loophole that allowed townships to surpass already extended caps on its usage. So, as well, following 1,3-D exposure can lead to community diversity and dominant bacterial populations being significantly altered, which, if you remember, increases that nitrous oxide gas in our atmosphere. So, chlorophycerin is also another insanely commonly used pesticide here in Santa Barbara County, and it is a Category 1 pesticide, meaning that it has the highest level of acute toxicity designation. And exposure has been shown to cause coughing, chest tightness, long-term respiratory sensitivity, along with metabolic acidosis, heart failure, and muscle damage. As well, many deaths have been reported. In one case, a child died from pulmonary edema within hours of exposure.
Wow.
In terms of its environmental effects, changes in the wind patterns spread the chemical into nearby residential areas. In one instance here in California, nearly 200 residents over a quarter-mile away experienced physical symptoms after this happened. Another incident, when chlorophycerin escaped through ventilation, killed thousands of animals, and even a nearby horse experienced muscle spasms and damage to its inner lining of various body cavities and organs.
This is here in California again?
That one was in Belgium,
Oh.
but it could just as easily happen here.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are the proposed solutions? Well, for one, the persistence of these chemicals is not simply the result of agricultural necessity, but really of policy environments where regulatory discourse has been heavily influenced by industry interest rather than the welfare of society.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that the economic complexities surrounding pesticide use aren't real, but they definitely shouldn't be obscuring the long-term risks. So there are many current alternatives that I'd like to present. So starting off, we have some new pesticides, and many of these have been developed to be alternatives to methyl bromide. And of course, they're very effective, but we're seeing the same concerns with the environment and human health. But what's even more concerning about these new pesticides is that they haven't really been tested. So authorities have not yet established an acceptable daily intake or acute reference dose to many of these. But don't worry, it has been found to be neurotoxic in acute inhalation studies.
Oof.
Yeah, so this really highlights our really messed up cost-benefit analysis system and not really precautionary approach. So onto the non-chemical alternatives. For post-harvest, we have things such as irradiation and controlled atmosphere storage. And all of these non-chemical alternatives are going to be lower risk to human health and the environment. But for these post-harvest alternatives, they often require longer treatment durations, meaning they're not really feasible for time-sensitive or perishable commodities. Biopesticides are also on the rise and really interesting as they are derived from natural resources. But we're seeing things such as inconsistent field performance, high production cost. As well, they have short shelf lives and degrade rapidly in sunlight, meaning their application isn't really practical for large-scale or long-term use.
Yeah.
But cultural control methods are really interesting because they might be. It could involve things such as intercropping or using pest-resistant crop varieties.
Mm-hmm.
The only issue is that they're just slightly less effective to the point that it wouldn't be economically feasible to completely phase out pesticides for the solution. For example, intercropping strawberries can suppress populations of a really harmful pest by 64%. As well, introducing natural enemies to target pests can cause an 81% reduction. But there are really promising alternatives, and one of these involves green chemistry. So in the field of green chemistry, reductive soil disinfestation is on the rise. It involves mixing organic matter into the soil and saturating it with water. And what's great about this is that this technique achieves results comparable to chemical pesticides, while not being a chemical and not increasing production costs. As well, integrated pest management systems are great. They basically just combine any kind of method that you would like to use that'll best suit your crops and your conditions. And adopting these methods has been shown to not only lower pesticide use, but also reduce production costs and improve farmers' profit margins. Another really cool alternative that I would love to present is artificial intelligence robots, such as Bonnie Rob, Laser Weeder, and R2 Weed 2, which are, I love that name, which are already being produced and distributed. We've already seen the benefits, like increased yield and, of course, reduced human exposure to these chemicals. But we're also seeing things such as increased productivity by reducing input costs and waste. This is because they allow crops to be harvested or maintained that would otherwise spoil due to the high labor demands. And this encourages more diverse crop cultivation, which can improve soil health, reduce pest and disease cycles, and decrease reliance on monoculture. But what about the harms? I assume that you're all thinking, what if, AI is just gonna completely replace all of the agricultural workers? Well, right now we're seeing chronic and worsening labor shortages in US agriculture, and California is not an exception. So, robots wouldn't necessarily be displacing workers, they would fill roles that are increasingly left vacant. But what about the future? What about when all labor-intensive agricultural jobs are replaced by artificial intelligence? Well, displaced workers can transition into new roles created by robotics. Right now, companies can train existing workers for upward mobility and invest in internal hiring to create a more resilient workforce. Then again, the extent to which these benefits are realized and the harms mitigated depends on policy choices, industry practices, and public oversight. So, how do we get to the best path forward? Well, I suggest that a realistic and responsible approach needs to prioritize eliminating the most dangerous pesticides entirely and allowing only those that have undergone rigorous and transparent testing. But I also propose that we need to start investing in things such as artificial intelligence robots, because their weeding and precise fumigation abilities will reduce pesticide use. And we need to use these robots along with integrated pest management systems, as when deployed together, these technologies and strategies can significantly cut back on chemical dependency. But how do we do this? How do we show the world that this is the right way to go? And the harms to pesticides, which are very rarely talked about because of its widespread use? Well, we need to start with things such as coalition building, with farm worker advocates, environmental groups, local communities, and other local nonprofits. As well, we need to engage in media campaigns and outreach to help raise public awareness about the long-standing harms of pesticide exposure. This can help to create pressure on policymakers to adopt science-backed regulations. As well, lobbying efforts are going to be crucial. Policymakers need to hear from the communities that are impacted by past regulatory failures, such as the approval of 1,3-D use near schools and homes, leading to a local educator living just one county over in Ventura, stating a lot of these kids, nearly all of these kids, and staff have cancer.
Jeez.
Really sad. And they not only need to realize the risks posed to the community, because let's be real, sometimes they don't really care. They need to know about the risks imposed on themselves. For instance, in 2017, there was a lawsuit filed that challenged the California Department of Pesticide Regulations for failing to regulate 1,3-D in accordance with legal requirements, and they won. This case, along with the countless others, signal that regulatory agencies might face growing legal and financial accountability for pesticide misuse and underregulation. But who do we need to be lobbying? We need to be lobbying those who are already engaged in environmental justice advocacy, or at the very least believe in it. Supervisors such as Doss Williams, Joan Hartman, and Laura Capps. These are the people that will hear our concerns, allow others to listen, project our voices, and work to solve these pressing issues. By taking the lead in public education, policy advocacy, and coalition building, we can play a pivotal role in creating a safer, more sustainable agricultural system. This is our chance to create a system that will protect our workers, the communities that surround our fields, the soil that sustains us all, for this generation and the next. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Wow.